There is a city in the north of Russia that nobody can visit without special permission. There are no roads that go into it and no roads that go out of it. It is the second coldest city on planet Earth, often reaching temperatures of minus 30 degrees Celsius. It is the most polluted city in Russia and one of the most polluted cities in the entire world. For years it had the worst air quality of any city, and throughout the last few decades, the surrounding river has turned blood red because of the amount of spillages and toxic waste that this city produces. It has some of the lowest quality water in any city, and when this water gets picked up by a snowstorm or turns into rainfall, it literally creates toxic storms that can cause long-term health problems, or acid rain that can burn or irritate the residents' skin. It's a place where the wind, the air, the water, or the isolation can harm or kill you, and yet 180,000 people live within its walls. It is called NORILSK, and while there may be a good chance you haven't heard about this city, there's an even better chance that you have something in your house that actually comes from this city, and that's because NORILSK produces 14% of the world's refined nickel, the metal that is used in many types of coins, batteries, sinks, and stainless steel products in general. It means the area is very valuable and important for our everyday products, but when you produce hundreds and thousands of tons of nickel every single year, there's obviously going to be some consequences. The environment suffers, the air suffers, and NORILSK becomes known as one of the worst cities in history to live in. What's interesting is that NORILSK was only officially recognized as a city in 1953. People had always known that the area was rich in minerals, but in 1919, a geologist known as Nikolai Irvinstev conducted a study that confirmed just how valuable this area was. He unearthed coal ores and metallic ores, and in 1935, the Gulag labor camp known as NORILSK was created to take advantage of the rich resources in the area. Initially, there were around 1,200 inmates, but after Stalin conducted the Great Purge, where he killed and imprisoned hundreds of thousands of political dissenters, the numbers in NORILSK increased to around 9,000, and for the next 2 decades, an estimated 350,000 prisoners were admitted into the camp. It's estimated that anywhere between 20,000 and 100,000 of these prisoners died inside of its walls because of how harsh the conditions were. 14-hour days, barely any sunlight, the coldest temperatures you can think of, and intense physical labor that essentially turned NORILSK into a viable industrial complex, all done on the backs of prisoners who were severely mistreated and overworked. This treatment eventually led to an uprising in 1953, shortly after Joseph Stalin's death, where the workers went on strike for 69 days. 1,000 prisoners were killed during this time, and eventually the uprising was suppressed. But the camp did not last long after this, and by 1957, it closed entirely. From the ashes of this labor camp came decades of development, power plants, mines, and industrialization, all created for the benefit of extracting these natural resources and selling them. Of course, a task like this requires a workforce who need apartments, entertainment, general amenities, and by the 1970s, NORILSK had a population of over 150,000 people, and it was a full-blown city. This remains the case today. Over 200,000 people call this home, and a lot of times they pay a deadly price for this. The life expectancy here is significantly lower than most of Russia, 10 years lower than the national average, but at the same time, wages are considerably higher. This is mostly because of one company, NORILSK Nickel. They are the company responsible for a large chunk of jobs in the city, a mining and smelting conglomerate that employs almost 75,000 people and has an average wage of almost $100,000 a year. Because of this, people come in droves to work for the company, and it keeps the city full and busy, but it also means that a multi-billion-dollar company looms over the entire place. The president of NORILSK Nickel is Vladimir Potanin, a controversial businessman worth around $20 billion who's said to be a part of Vladimir Putin's inner circle. The major shareholders also include other billionaires like Roman Abramovich and Oleg Deripaska. The company is packed with Russian oligarchs who rarely step foot inside the actual city, but make a lot of money from its resources and the backs of the workforce. This is the kind of power that hovers over NORILSK, but by simply looking at it, you would not think that billions of dollars were pumped into this place. Still, despite the city's doom and gloom, the people are resilient. Human beings can truly adapt to anything, and NORILSK is no different. A lot of the older, retired people in the city that continue to live there are directly responsible for a lot of the early development of the city, and they take pride in that fact. It's also produced a number of artists, musicians, and photographers who obviously have a lot to say coming from this place. One of these musicians is Naja Tolokonikova, who is the founder of a band known as Pussy Riot, a punk rock band that consistently criticizes the Russian government and its policies. She actually ended up in prison for 2 years after a protest performance in Moscow in 2012, and it's very likely that Naja formed a lot of her anti-authoritarian views in NORILSK, and in July of 2019, she actually wrote quite a profound essay known as Black Snowballs, where she talked about her time in NORILSK. In the essay, she said the following: I was born and raised in NORILSK, an industrial city located above the Arctic Circle and built on human bones. It's minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind blows at 45 miles per hour. The winter lasts 9 months every year. Those winters bring blackout blizzards, perpetual frost, and snow that starts on the first day of school. That alone would be enough to break through the immune system of the city's residents, but in fact, it's only the beginning. Our icy hell is also fatally toxic. The trees in and around NORILSK are dead. They are black sticks that pierce the sky exactly like the trees in post-apocalyptic films. Their leaves have grown necrotic from the sulfuric acid rain. Here's a short list of the things that get dumped into the rivers near NORILSK: iron, nickel, petroleum products, lead, copper, chlorides, nitrates, calcium, magnesium, phosphates, and zinc. In the air, there's sulfur dioxide, nitrates, sulfates, phenols, industrial waste, and heavy metals. Nickel puts 2 million tons of sulfur dioxide into the air every year. It increases sulfur dioxide concentrations in every single country in Western Europe. That's 11 tons annually for every single resident of NORILSK. Sometimes you can't see the buildings next door because the air is blue-gray with gas. The sky is smog. When you leave your house, you pull a scarf over your face. Not just because of the blizzards, but because the air burns your eyes, your nose, your mouth, and your lungs. When combined with drops of water, sulfur dioxide forms sulfuric acid. If that can make the nearby forest necrotic, then what can it do to your lungs? $19 billion. Vladimir Potanin's net worth was made on the backs of human beings who have to live in one of the dirtiest cities in the world. A city that some data indicates has higher levels of dangerous contaminants than Chernobyl itself. Corporations cannot exist without social control. Every single one of us must have the ability to verify exactly what happens in these corporate empires, and every single one of us must have the ability to affect what we find there. I do not mean to say we should immediately close absolutely every plant and shut down every factory. I am only saying that humankind has two possible paths. Either stick to business as usual and go extinct as the entire planet turns into Chernobyl or NORILSK, or strain ourselves and imagine how we can build a developed technological civilization while using renewable energy sources for manufacturing. There's more to that essay, and I'm going to leave it linked down below because I think it's exceptionally well written, and it's amazing to see somebody who's actually from NORILSK talk about it in this retrospective way, especially when they themselves have gone on to achieve big things. And it's important to note that there are people who are genuinely happy in this city, and there are other people who have left the city and gone on to criticize it, and I think both groups are valid. If they can make the best of a living situation that's less than ideal and make some money along the way, I think that's great. And if they can leave the city and live in a better, safer environment, I think that's also great. The people are not to blame. They're simply working to provide for their families, and as long as the resources and the money are there, I don't think that's going to change. But it's hard not to ignore the glaring moral and ethical dilemmas that come with a city like NORILSK. The workforce makes scraps in comparison to the billionaires that they work for, but they're the ones whose lives are affected by these harsh terrains. There are so many reasons not to live in NORILSK. The toxins, the deadly cold, the total darkness, the air, and the graves it was ultimately built on are just a few reasons people would be inclined to stay away from here. But it's also the home to a lot of money, and it's amazing how many times the latter ultimately wins.